Hello friends, welcome to my channel Code Blocks. In this video, I talk about the multiplication of two matrices. In the previous video, I talk about the summation of two matrices, and in this video, I'll talk about the multiplication of two matrices. So to multiply between two matrices, so first of all you have to check the number of rows and the number of columns in the given two matrices. Here A matrix is the number of row is 2 and the column is also 2, and in this matrix B the rows and the columns are 2. So always check the number of columns in first matrix and the number of rows in the second matrix are always must be same to multiply in between two matrices. So the number of columns in the first matrix and number of rows in the second matrix, it's always must be same. Either the matrices is not possible, the multiplication of the matrix is not possible. And now the first group element is multiply, that means this is the row wise and the multiplication is done in column wise. This way the 1 is multiplied with 5 and plus this element 2 is multiplied with 7, and thereafter and this value is picked and placed at here 19, and thereafter and 1 is multiplied with 6 and 2 is multiplied with 18, and the summation is placed at here 22, just written here for understanding purpose. And now this row, select this row and it multiply with first column, and the resultant will be as here is 43, and now we have to select the row of the first matrix and it is multiply with the column of the second matrix 6 and 8. The result here is 50. So this is the multiplication of matrix, and now go to the implementation part. So first of all write the header files. Now the main function. Now declaring all the variables m, n, p and q and the matrices and the arrays, 2D arrays. Through 2D arrays we can access or we can implement the matrices. Second, the maximum array and the columns are here given as 10 and 10, and the resultant will be stored here sum. So now first of all we have to print printf enter the number of rows and columns. Scanf, through scanf we have to take the inputs from user. %d, %m and %n, the rows and the columns of the first matrix. Now I have to take using for loop, I have to take the inputs from the user, less the name plus for j is equal to 0, j less than n, j plus, and before I have to declare the I and j. and now I have to take the inputs from user. Scanf %d and percent of first IO and j. Now printf enter the number of rows and columns. Scanf %d and ampersand p and ampersand q. As I said earlier, so to multiply or to multiplication with two matrices, we have to check the rows and the columns, the column of the first matrix, and so we have to check the column of the first matrix and the row of the second matrix must be same, either the some multiplication is not possible. So I have to check if here the columns is in the column of the first matrix is n and not equal to p, the row of the second matrix. If it is not possible, then I have to print that multiplication is not possible. Multiplication is not possible. Then either else. If it is same, then we have to take the we have to take all the inputs from the user for second matrix. For I equal to 0, I less than, here it's q sorry p and I plus plus, and inside this for loop I have to take another for loop that is called the nested loops. J less than q, j plus plus, scanf %d percentage d and percent of second I and j. Okay, now after taking the elements of this for the second matrix, and just I have to write here for understanding purpose printf and enter the element of second matrix. Okay, now after this for loop I have to done the multiplication of these two matrices. For multiplication purpose I have to take the nested loops for I is equal to 0. For here, as we said earlier, the resultant matrix now comes here. So the resultant matrix will always be the number of rows of the first matrix multiply into the number of columns of the second matrix. That means here also 2. That means in case of here m n m cross n, and P cross Q. Here in that case N and P must be same and the resultant will be M cross Q. This is the resultant matrix always be M cross Q. That means the number of rows is the number of rows in the first matrix. The resultant matrix have number of rows in the first matrix that are present, and the columns are the number of columns that are present in the second matrix. So I is equal to 0, I always less than M and I plus plus. Inside this I have to take a nested loop for j is equal to 0, j less than, no, I am writing not here, it's n, it's not n, it's q. The here m is the rows of the first matrix and j is the column of the second matrix, and j plus plus. And now inside this I have to take another for loop for printing, for multiplication purpose. For k is equal to 0, k less than m, k plus plus. Now declaring the k here, k. Inside this I have to take another temporary variable here, so change it to multiply, and I have to take another temporary variable, this sum is equal to 0. Now here sum is equal to sum of sum plus first matrix of I and j multiply with second I and j, and after that, after this for loop, and the multiply array I of j will store the value of the sum. Now after this else loop, and this in the multiply of I j is equal to sum, and using this the multiply array, this 2D array will store all the multiplication value. That means it is the resultant matrix. Now I have to print the resultant matrix, that means the resultant array, resultant 2D array, printf, and the product of two matrix, product of two matrices. For I is equal to 0, I less than m, I plus plus, and inside this I have to take another for loop, j is equal to 0, j less than q, j plus plus, and I have to print the elements, printf %d, and the multiply I and multiply j, and after this I have to give a line space, printf /n, and after this return 0. Now go to the output. Okay, now executing the file. Printf. Okay, put section, compile this code, and now I have to enter the number of rows and columns. I am giving 2 and 2 here. Enter the elements of the first matrix, so 2 and 2, 2 and 2. Enter the number of rows and columns. As I said earlier, the number of columns of the first row and the number of rows in the second and number of rows in the second matrix must be same. That means n always is equal to p in here. So if I write here 3 and 2, it shows that matrix multiplication is not possible. So enter the multiplication is not possible. Okay, 2 and 2, elements are 2 and 2, 2 and 2. Number of rows and columns of the second matrix. Okay, 2 and 2, and enter the elements of the second matrix, 3 and 3, 3 and 3. So this is the product of the matrix 12, 24, 36 and 48. That's all for the